all of this is happening. It's not a prediction of what might happen, it is already happening. It's an analysis and an education on what already is happening. So unless you are just completely ignoring all this and hiding from it and hoping it won't affect you, and you'll keep your head low, and then you will not be in trouble because nobody will discover you, you'll quietly just make your money, put it in the bank, and become better, more strong. That's not going to work. You have to face this. And whether you choose to go have a public profile, public persona or not, you must at least be educated on what it is. You shouldn't say that we're just here to make some money. You should invest a little bit to understand the history of Scotland. And who are the people, what's their history, how are Scottish different from English and Irish? They have a very interesting, complex relationship. The relationship between Scotland, Ireland, England is fascinating and very complex.
Thank you so much.
I'm delighted to be here. I used to visit Scotland in the 70s and in the 80s. I used to visit on a regular basis because my company, we used to have a R&D center in Cumbernauld. So I used to come and have a lot of fond memories of fantastic food and music and so on, festivals and so forth. But I didn't come for at least 20 years now. So I'm glad to be here. I wish I could spend more time and enjoy, but I have to get back tonight. So sorry for this, very rushed. And thank you all for making such a lot of arrangements, and wonderful to meet Richa, who has known me secretly, she says, for many years. So we'll get to know each other more this time. But let me just say let me just make some broad points. I think all of you are first generation immigrants. You seem like that, most of you. And the immigrants always have to first find their foundations, make money, get established, buy homes, cars, raise their kids, send them to college. This is true not only of Indians, but all immigrants. US is a land of immigrants initially from Europe, and they all did that. All the first generation, a lot of Scottish people settled in United States also, and people from many other parts of Europe, and they all went through the same thing. The first generation had to work hard and establish themselves, then they started building communities, and so on. So things have changed in the world since then. Now, identities have become suddenly much more important than they used to be. I remember 20-some years ago, the book The Flat World made headlines as a bestseller, Tom Friedman, because he predicted there's no more boundaries, because it's the age of globalization and the internet, and it doesn't matter, if you're living in Edinburgh, you're eating sushi, and you're sitting in China and you're eating idli, and it's all this kind of a pop culture is mixed up. And so it doesn't matter, identities don't matter, there'll be no more countries, there'll be no more ethnic identities, religious identities, linguistic identities, those are all obsolete. So we're all melting and dissolved, we're all being melted into a common thing. And I opposed it at that time. And one of my first books was called Being Different, not same, to show the opposite view. And Being Different, and the byline was An Indian Challenge to Western Universalism. Western Universalism is the Western view that its history and its philosophy and its ideals and its social thought is universal for everybody. Because the West dominated and colonized others, therefore the assumption is that what happened to us should happen to everybody, what we believe is the truth is the gold standard for everybody, and so on. And so I'm challenging that from an Indian point of view to show that there is a very distinct Indian view which is not the same and which has its values. And I'm not saying that it's superior, but it's different. There's a Chinese view, there's an Arabic view, there is an Eskimo view, there's an African view. There are many views, and there's no one universal. Each of them may think that my view is the best and it's universal, that's fine, but they have to respect the fact that others also feel that way about their views. So you see, these worldviews and different histories did not go away as per Tom Friedman's prediction and as per the wishes of people who are called postmodernists. Those of you who have studied English, in the study of English honors, you or your kids will go through postmodernism as a sort of theoretical framework by which to study text and understand different, different genre. The postmodernists also predicted the end of grand narratives. This whole idea that there's a grand narrative of this country, the Scottish have a grand narrative of their pride, and the Irish have, all this will go away. It didn't go away. In fact, it's gotten more intensified. The whole Scotland movement is a testimony to this. There are such movements everywhere in the world. So you as Indians should not think that by surrendering your identity, by giving up your identity as Indians, others will also think that you don't have an Indianness and you are just one of them. It's not going to happen, because it's very clear to people who they are, who the others are. And this doesn't have to be tension, it can be celebration of diversity. It should be with celebration of diversity. It should be, I respect you and I want you to respect me. We are different, we are not the same, but we respect each other. And we each have different strengths, and we can complement each other and work together. Communities that do that are a role model for the whole world, because you have the same situation happening everywhere in the world. Everywhere in the world you have these kind of things happening. It's not just that there is a Scotland with Indians here. I mean, everywhere you have people from everywhere else. So that mixing is happening, but people want to keep their language, their identity, their spirituality, traditions, a sense of history. That is very important to security, to a sense of self-esteem. And why shouldn't they? Why should there be one universalism that is the gold standard that I should have to submit to? Why should I? I mean, I have my own pride, like everybody else has their pride. So you must realize that as a community in this country, you will go through similar experiences that Indians had elsewhere. And I can tell you, I lived in the United States for 53 years now, about 52, 53 years. And I've been through all the phases, all the technological generations and revolutions and the social and identity and ethnic and political. I've been through all that, and I'm a commentator on these things. So I'm not just minding my own business, doing my work, but I'm actually intervening and understanding society very actively all the time. So I can tell you what all you will go through, and I can tell you that it is very important for you to claim your identity, to claim a sense of who you are, while having 100% respect and loyalty to Britain and to Scotland. You should also assert your own identity as who you are, and people will then respect you more. They don't respect you less, but they respect you more if you're very clear about who you are, because ours is not an identity that tries to be aggressive on others. We're not trying to convert other people. We're not trying to knock them down. We are trying to respect them, and we just want equal respect for ourselves. So that's quite different from some of the other communities where they feel that they ought to show their superiority and assert themselves on other people. So the reason I'm saying all this is that the latest book I have, Snakes in the Ganga, is about the trend which is called Bookism, which is going all over the world, started in the United States. And it's come to Britain, it's come to India, it's come everywhere. In London, I gave a seminar to the main activists and scholars of our community. 40 of them were gathered for a long discussion, and I gave a tutorial. I won't repeat that here, but I will say that the net result of this wokeism is the following. First, there is an attack on meritocracy. Yeah. The attack on meritocracy is really going to dismantle society, because what made these countries great is that they were innovative. America became great because of its innovations. Before that, Britain used to be very innovative, and Britain lost out somehow. And now China is coming and becoming innovative. And innovation requires meritocracy. You cannot have meritocracy if you are taking the ones who are the brightest and holding them back, because it's politically incorrect to make some people win. So this business of, there is something called equity. How many of you know what is equity and why equity is different? How equity is different from equality? Anybody? Okay, so I will tell you. Equality, there's one person there, another person. Two young persons know, which is good sign. So equality is what we think of, we like, that we're all equal and some of us will perform better than others based on meritocracy, right? Equity says that that is unfair. What we need is equal outcome. Equal outcome. So when people apply to Harvard for admission, if they were to go strictly on merit, Harvard says that 44-45% will be Asian. And they think that's unfair to those who don't get in on merit. So they have a quota system which says we'll have equal outcomes in proportion to the society. Like a quota system which people from India are familiar with. That's an equity system, not an equality system, because it's not treating everybody equal based on merit. It's treating people based on your ethnicity and your gender, all kind of factors. And so one of the casualties of wokeism is equity rather than equality. So it's not meritocracy. It's not meritocracy. So once I had a debate where I was arguing with somebody who said that African Americans based on merit, they won't get enough seats in Harvard, and Asians will get too many seats, and so therefore it's unfair. And the idea that those who win are winning because they're oppressors. So there's a moral judgment on merit. It's not just that, hey, you're better, but let's just accommodate us also. But you're better because you're an inferior human being. There's something immoral about you. These structures were made by dominant people, oppressors, so that their society could win and oppress my society. So that's the theory. That's the theory that if you are on merit, you are superior, then it means that you are an oppressor, you have an unfair advantage over me because I cannot compete. So I said, and this person said that in math, Indians do better, and therefore there's something wrong. So I said, in basketball, Africans are taller than Indians, so you have an advantage and you are ahead in merit, and therefore you are oppressing me. I'm feeling intimidated. I stand in this basketball court and you're taller and I feel intimidated. I feel that you have an unfair advantage over me. I'm oppressed, you are the oppressor. So why don't we have a quota system for how a team will be composed, so that there's an Asian quota in all the basketball teams. And maybe there should be an Asian quota and an African quota and a Hispanic quota and all that in all the Olympics. And of course that's ridiculous, but the way you argue is to turn their own logic back on them, and then they cannot handle it. So when you give them such arguments, then the second problem kicks in. The second problem with woke is the end of free speech, suppression of free speech. It's called cancel culture. You guys have come across this term recently, but I've faced it for 30 years. Before they coined the term, I was facing it, because I was saying things which are uncomfortable truths, which people don't want to hear. So it's not just cancel culture in the United States or Britain, there's cancel culture in India. There's cancel culture wherever I've gone. This business that those who represent the dominant identity, as defined by them, have an unfair advantage, and therefore they can be cancelled by those who are deemed to be oppressed. The oppressed have a right over the oppressor by being allowed to suppress their free speech. So free speech is not free. Free speech is a quota. So the idea of suppressing free speech means there is an assumption of somebody gets to decide who's the oppressor and who's the oppressed. Now, I don't know how they decided that I'm oppressor. How do they decide that? I tell them I come from a colonized background, so we are oppressed. Yeah, we are oppressed. But the answer given is, the theory is that the structures of America, and I'm talking about America, but the same argument is used elsewhere. The structures of America were created by white supremacists, and therefore anybody who wins is part of the white supremacy. So since Asians are doing very well, Indians are the highest per capita income in the United States. And so since they're doing so well, we are called white adjacent. We are called white adjacent, which means we're not white, but we're adjacent to them because we participate in the same privileges. Since we have figured out how to use those structures, like we figured out how to play cricket, we also figured out how to use the structures and succeed. You see, so the fact that these structures are accused of being white structures doesn't mean that we aren't also benefiting. We managed to figure it out and benefit, and therefore we are accused of upholding those structures, perpetuating them by being successful and celebrating, because every time a community comes and succeeds in America, it's upholding the American values. So this is therefore we are accused of that, and hence we are called white adjacent. This is a new term that you guys will come across. So maybe when you are very successful, they will call you Scott adjacent, or maybe they'll coin a term like that. I don't know. But in the United States, they've done that. This business of first meritocracy is being knocked down, and then this free speech is being knocked down, and then structures that are to be knocked down include family. So there's teachings going on openly telling Indian students at Harvard, don't believe in the family structure you come from because it's abusive, it's oppressive, it's teaching you to become an oppressor. The only way you can stop being an oppressor is you disown your family and revolt against them. So it's an assault on family. And this assault on family is also an assault on gender and sexuality. So this business of trans and fluidity of gender and all that has a theoretical, philosophical basis. It's not just for individual rights, which I support. Everybody should have a right to live the way they want. But this is a political ideology which is weaponizing the communities that feel that are being made to feel that they are oppressed. So now in America there is something called grievance studies. Grievance studies means all those people who have grievances for whatever reason. You can start grievance studies, and if there's enough people with the same grievance, then you become a category. So there is in grievance studies there's something called fat studies, which says that fat people, there's nothing wrong with them, there's no medical problem, it's just made up, but there's a prejudice against fat people, and so we are grieved and we should have a quota. So I keep saying that there should be also a quota for bald men wearing glasses. Because if enough of us, enough bald guys, there must be some here, if we make enough noise and say we have a grievance, because they are all biased against us, then we get some benefit out of it. So it means that if you raise hell, if you shout, scream, create a problem, become a nuisance, you may get something out of it. So this is what is happening with this new wokeism, which says that all the different kinds of people with grievances who are oppressed should unite and topple the whole establishment. It's kind of a new Marxism, a new kind of a revolution against the society, against the structures, against religions. Now, strangely, certain religions have gotten into this wokeism, built an alliance, and they are not only exempt, their structures are not only exempt from being dismantled, but they are considered oppressed. And so, therefore, they have rights over other people in different parts of the world where they might be a minority. This has become very big. So you have a coalition of certain minority religions that are very aggressive and assertive, but they have managed to convince the left that they have a grievance, they are useful for each other, they can have an alliance to help each other, and other kind of grievance people, blacks, leftists, some minority religion, and Dalits have joined in. And Dalits are now considered black adjacent, which means that the Dalits are the blacks of India. That's the new phrase. And the non-Dalits are the whites of India. This is the terminology. So But before you think this is all far-fetched, let me tell you that the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of India, Mr. Chandrachud, quotes all this. He believes in all this. We have many of his lectures we put up on and responded to him on Twitter, where he's quoting the folks of Harvard, these woke folks. He's quoting them. He's using the word woke. He's using the word critical race theory, critical caste theory, oppressor, oppressed, grievances, dismantling structures. All of this is happening. It's not a prediction of what might happen. It is already happening. It's an analysis and an education on what already is happening. So unless you are just completely ignoring all this and hiding from it and hoping it won't affect you and you'll keep your head low and then you will not be in trouble because nobody will discover you, you'll quietly just make your money, put it in the bank and become better, more strong, that's not going to work. You have to face this. And whether you choose to go have a public profile, public persona or not, you must at least be educated on what it is. Even if you are a totally private person, don't be ignorant about it. You should at least know, so when it happens, you can recognize it. You can say, that's where this is coming from. That's the logic he's using. And here are my two options. So this book, Snakes in the Ganga, is a kind of a toolkit, an educational book on this particular issue that I would welcome if you guys want to take a copy and look at it. Now let me say a little bit about Scotland, because when I was doing business in several countries, I always wanted to study the history and culture and the religion and the politics of the country, every country, just to understand the people better. I wanted to go to the monuments and ask people, why is this person famous and what happened at this historical moment, to see why the people, local people, celebrate certain events in history, certain moments that are very important to them, certain personalities. And this gives you a very good idea of the local culture. I found this to be an immense tool in being able to deal with local businesses. I had businesses in Czech and in Slovakia when it was Czechoslovakia, and they were negotiating a settlement to separate, and I knew both sides. I have lots of friends in Poland, in Hungary, in Romania, in Britain, in Ireland, in Germany, in France, in South Korea, in Mexico, and on and on. And so I really got to know local societies to whatever extent I was able to learn. I certainly spent a lot of time in the evenings and weekends meeting such people, professors and scholars, and reading on my own. And by the way, I was running a tech business, had nothing to do with any of this. But I thought it's good for me to know about the people where I'm living. Now, you should do that. You shouldn't say that we're just here to make some money. You should invest a little bit to understand the history of Scotland. And who are the people, what's their history, how are Scottish different from English and Irish? They have a very interesting, complex relationship. The relationship between Scotland, Ireland, England is fascinating and very complex. A lot of love-hate, a lot of clashes, a lot of conflicts going way back, ideological, political, etc. So this is not something I can just explain in a few words, but it's a topic that you guys should study. Because too many people from India, most people, think that if they know England, they know Britain. But that's not true. The reason it's called United Kingdom is because there are 4 separate kingdoms. And they have been put together, some will say artificially. I don't want to get into that. But some will say it's a recent thing. It's not like it was always like that. There were 4 separate things, and somebody united them into a single political entity. So the fact that they have separate histories, separate identities, separate politics, separate ethnicities, separate languages is very important for you to know. And you must therefore understand Britain, and because you live here, and you must also understand Scotland. You must, and every one of you should take a certain amount of time, and the organization should lead some discussions, bring some experts, bring a professor of history, and give him a topic on what is distinct about Scotland and what are the milestones of Scotland. And you'll also find that these relationships among the British Isles, among the different 4 kingdoms, has a lot to do with their relationship with India. You'll be fascinated that the relationships among the kingdoms of UK is not independent of their relationships with India. For example, England colonized Ireland, okay, and many of the things, many of the practices, many of the terminologies, many of the structures of that colonization was useful or was applied when they later colonized India. So it was like in their neighborhood they tried it out, like neighborhood thing. And that colonization, how you colonize, how do you control people, where do you interfere, where do you not interfere, how do you leave them alone, who do you appoint to rule over them, all that kind of stuff was experimented and tested out and perfected to some extent in England's colonization of Ireland. And then later on, many of these parallels were applied to India. This is very interesting that you guys should know about. So I find that, whether it's diplomats who don't understand these things, they spend 3 years here, 5 years there, 2 years there, and they're not really deep into understanding all this. Whether it's our gurus who come and teach our Hindu dharma, I mean, they just sort of treat it like some uniform thing, that you learn how to breathe and everything is fine. But you need to know these things. Every place you go, you have to understand. You have to understand what is distinct about the local. Otherwise, why is it that your experience in Scotland is different from the experience that similar people are having in England? And why is that different from France? And why is that different from Germany? See, I am an Indian, lived 53 years in America, and I'm telling you all these things, but you should be knowing more about it. When I ask people, what is the history of Scotland and its relationship with Hindus and Muslims and Indians and all of that, and how does it compare and contrast with that of England, nobody seems to know. I shouldn't be the one explaining this, but you should be the one explaining to me. So this is the first thing you do as to build a community and build leadership. You must know who are the majority culture around you and what is interesting and fascinating about the history. So when you're sitting down with a Scottish person, you're having one of these great Scotch whiskies, you should be able to chat with them and say, hey, this is a little bit I know about you guys, and they'll find it fascinating. Believe me, one of the first things I did, I was 20 years old when I went to the United States. There were no Indians, very few. The town I went to had no Indians there. There were hardly any Indians in the early 70s, so it was very kind of by yourself, and you learn through experiment and experience and all that. I found it very interesting that they had so many identities. The Americans, if 5 or 10 of them would sit around, they would say, somebody would say, I'm Italian American, and somebody would say, I'm Irish American, and somebody would say, my grandfather came from Germany, and grandmother came from France, and they're very clear about their identity, their origins. Somebody would say, I'm Presbyterian, which is linked with the Scottish background. In fact, the town of Princeton is a Presbyterian town. Our local church is a Presbyterian church. So it is not just enough to say Christian, you should know Protestant. And it's not enough to say Protestant, you should know Presbyterian. And when you say Presbyterian, what is their history? You should know these things. So I started understanding why this guy said I'm Presbyterian, what was so important, and this guy said he's from a Catholic school and all. And I realized that this is not a superficial thing for them. It's a matter of pride. They wear this with this background of theirs. It's sort of like if you're sitting in a dhaba in Delhi, some guy will say, I'm from Bengal and I can say something, and somebody will say, I'm this Punjabi and I want to eat my, chola bhatura and things like that. So we have this pride too. It's like, everywhere it's like that. So you must understand the community in that way. I've started studying the history of United States and the history of America even before there was United States, to see the different colonies from different parts of Europe. The Dutch had colonized, the French had colonized parts of Europe, the English had colonized, the French, all kind of colonies corresponding to all kind. Germany had colonized. You think Germany never colonized, but Germany colonized. And how these colonies behave with each other, how they behave with the Native Americans, and how they shape this idea of being a common sort of entity, and get rid of King James, the British monarch, get rid of him and get independence in 1776. It's a fascinating story. If you go and show respect and knowledge, and not just superficialities that I ate this thing which you people make. That's okay, that's pop culture. But you must have deep knowledge, deep culture knowledge, not just superficial culture knowledge. And when you demonstrate the sincerity of that, and that you are doing it with respect, you will also be entitled to being able to explain to them who you are and why you should be respected also. This is how you get mutual respect in a certain part of the world. And like we got problems, with future and economy and what will happen and the political instability, so do they. So there is something common. They're also vulnerable people. They also have fragile situations in them. And so if you can connect at that level, it will be a good friendship, and you will be a stronger community. You will be more confident. You should be able to stand up and give a talk on the history of Indian and Scottish relations from the last so many period of time. That will be very fascinating. And you should have young people who can stand up and give a talk, because there is such a history. There is a history of India with Ireland, there is a history of India with Wales, there is a history of India with England. There are these histories. And there is a different history from France, different history from all these other places. So connecting people at a level which is their sense of pride and their sense of heritage is a great asset that I feel our people don't invest time in, because they're too busy with the day job and their short-term idea that I'll optimize my success in my profession, I'll just fix it, and I don't need to worry about all these things. But I hope you're open to this. I could go on talking quite a lot on many different things, but I decided to focus on this because I just asked a few questions to people on my way here about India and Scotland and Indians and what the issues are, and I figured that this might be a useful topic. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll be happy to take questions.
Rajiv ji, thank you very much for gracing us with your august presence over here, and welcome again to Edinburgh. Ladies and gentlemen, Puneet ji and office bearer of Scottish Friends of India, a very good afternoon, very good evening to all of you. And first of all, I extend my congratulations to Puneet ji and his team, Richa ji and others, for arranging this wonderful discourse by Rajiv ji today. I'm sure that everybody of us has benefited a little bit, or to the extent according to his own capacity. Thanks again. And you must be bored of listening this phrase again and again from me, that I really feel happy and privileged to be among you. I know it is repetition, but fact remains always a fact, whether it is said once or it is said 100 times. So I really feel happy and proud to be among you. And I'm very happy to see all the persons of Indian origin, along with our Scottish friends, united in this hall. I cannot agree more with Rajiv ji when you said that we should assimilate the culture of the place where we live. I'm really very happy to see so many familiar faces over here, and their contribution to the economy of Scotland and to bilateral relations, whether it is cultural or economic, between India and Scotland, is valuable. We always appreciate this contribution and feel proud about it. I think should not take much of your time. I'm really, again, very happy, and I feel thankful for the invitation that has been extended to me by the Scottish Friends Scottish Friends of India over here. And thank you again, Rajiv ji, to be among us and for giving your enlightening, invigorating, and energizing discourse. Thank you so much.
There are various Hindu organizations. They are working towards bringing the required changes, but they are facing the lack of legal representation. The forces working against Hindus' culture are very strong by the legal background. What can be done to overcome this situation? Are there any organizations on the global level that can help Hindu organizations to represent themselves legally?
The first thing you need to do is to understand the problem better than you currently do, because you need to understand the historical origin of these forces. What are these forces? Who are they? What is their ideology? Like I did my whole book, a recent one on US-based Bookism, where it came from, which are the different forces that came together, why they came together, what is their theory. Unless you do that, you cannot come up with a response. So you need a Scotland version of that. You need some scholars, some people to do some work on who are the forces that are creating the problem, why are they doing it, who funds them, and what is their outcome, what is the goal that they want to, what outcome do they want to achieve, what are the international links of these. It cannot just be on hearsay. It cannot be reactive to a latest episode, some problem happened here, or some scandal or something, and then we respond to it and we're very upset. It cannot just be that. You got to go beneath the surface, and you got to take a longer view, and this requires good scholarship. You need good scholarship on what are the factors facing the Hindu community in Edinburgh, and then you will have the basis on which you can come up with a response.
This question, I believe, is very close to Rajiv Malhotra, sir, because his work on the AI has been tremendous. So, question related to the AI, artificial intelligence. What are your views on AI replacing the jobs? Is it possible in future that most of the human jobs are getting replaced by AI?
So, I have a book called Artificial Intelligence and the Future of Power, 5 battlegrounds. And one of the battlegrounds is jobs. There are 5 battlegrounds that AI is kind of, triggering. And so it's going to sweep the whole world in every respect, every industry, military, sports, arts, geopolitics, identities, philosophies, religions. It'll have an impact on every single aspect of human life. And I explained that in this book. When it first came out, and even before that when I was speaking about it, people were sort of poo-pooing it and saying, oh no, this seems like very big, conspiracy theory and science fiction and all. They didn't understand it. And now all of this is happening. And let me tell you that this ChatGPT, which has created a big sensation, is only a small tip of the iceberg. This is a very tiny thing. In fact, from an AI point of view, it's not a very big accomplishment. But wait for 3-4 more years and you will see things happening on a scale and of a kind that you cannot imagine unless you are within the AI field. So the AI revolution is similar to the industrial revolution that Britain had. And to know how the world will change, you need to brush up your history on what happened in the industrial revolution. So firstly, old methods were replaced by new methods. Old jobs were replaced by new jobs. Jobs were created. So I'm not a Luddite. Not many of you know what that is. I'm not a Luddite. I do believe that old jobs will be dead and new jobs will be created. However, the new jobs will not be in the same town and village as the jobs that have been killed. And they will not necessarily be in the same country. So in the industrial revolution, Britain created a lot of new jobs, but the jobs in India were lost because the electrified industry was ahead. The manual industry was not able to keep up with it. So, of course, jobs were killed and jobs were created, but not in the same place and not the same people. Maybe somebody in his 40s loses his job and somebody in his 20s gets another job. So it is a disruption. It is a disruption within the same towns. It's a disruption within regions of the same country. It's a disruption across the world. So there will be a new age of colonization, a new age of colonization. And I'm going to speak in the British Parliament tomorrow, and I'm going to talk about 2 very big issues. One of them is this, and I will ask a very provocative question, and I'm wondering how they will respond or how they will react. And one of my questions will be, the issue I'm raising is the following. I'll give you a sneak preview. You don't tell them in advance, please. They might cancel my talk. When the Industrial Revolution happened in Britain, it changed the world. And that is what led to the East India Company. There would have been no colonization. East India Company existed since 1600, but it became powerful because of the Industrial Revolution. So it means that this new Industrial Revolution will also create a new kinds of East India companies and new kind of colonization. and new kind of colonies. Now there was not one major industrial power, but two, France. So Britain and France were the two big industrial powers, both enemies, like we now have United States and China. Two AI-powered geopolitical giants, just like the previous industrial revolution was led by Britain and France fighting each other and fighting over colonies, each of them grabbing land, grabbing colonies, but fighting each other. You know, in Britain, in India, there was a French were fighting the British in India. I don't know if you know that. So same way as, you know, US and China may fight over some place. So the role of Britain and France in those days is similar to the role of US and China today. That's my feeling. And they'll not only fight each other, but they'll fight over other people. The others are going to become colonized. Some will have alliances. Some will be treated okay. Some will be suppressed. Some will be broken up. And that remains to be seen. So the question I'm going to provoke is, could Britain end up as a colony? Because it's not in the AI revolution at the top. It is US and China, and what happens to Britain, I will ask. And I'm provoking that, you know. And could it be that the leading colonizer of the past will end up getting colonized? And the second part of the question is, could it be colonization not by a country, but by a company? And if you think that's not possible, the East India Company was a private company, like Google is, like Facebook is, like Microsoft is, like Amazon is, like Apple is. All these giants, Chinese giants too, are private companies fighting each other. Like there was a French East India Company and a British East India Company and a Dutch East India Company fighting each other for global market share. They were not governments. So we are having a return of, I have a chapter in my AI book called The Return of the East India Company. I have a chapter like that. And they didn't like to see any of that because a lot of the big shots in India are aligned with this thing that's going on, not aware of the problems and not even forget being able to counter all this. They don't even understand, or they are in denial. They don't want to understand. So that's the sort of thing I do, and that's my view on where AI is going. And I'm going to drop this bombshell in the parliament. I have one more bombshell to drop also.
Thank you so much. Rajivji has taught us how to ask the question. And the question, it does lead to the evidence-based Hindu culture we have. And the question I have here is very profound, and it relates to what he has said. How to counter the woke Hindu culture as they don't read scriptures themselves and spread wrong narrative. How can we spread the right knowledge around?
Well, I'm not sure the question is clear, because woke is not Hindu culture. It's not nothing to do with woke. So I think what you mean is, why are there Hindus who are ignorant? Is that the question?
I think so, yeah.
Why are there Hindus who are ignorant, don't read the scriptures, and are over-opinionated? It has nothing to do with the woke culture, which is something else. So Hindus are now not studying their own culture. There is a colonial reason for it, but that reason is over for the last 75 years. It's not an excuse. I think today the reason is that the parents are very busy making money, living a modern lifestyle, which is fine, which is expected. They have to do that. And therefore they have no time to impart this knowledge to their kids because they don't know themselves. So this is where organizations are needed, and you have to support those. You, the public, have to support those organizations, and those organizations have to provide you with guidance and education for yourself and for your children. And you cannot expect everybody to be self-taught. This is also a role for the government to play a role in terms of cultural education. There's a role for the gurus because they make tons of money and they have huge amount. They're like multinationals. They're just spinning billions of dollars, and they have to play a role. They have a responsibility to educate the public, not just do some pujas and some bhakti and rituals and collect your money, but they have a responsibility to deal with the real issues that you're facing. If your kids are facing bullying in school, they have to deal with it. If you're facing an identity oppression in the media, and you're afraid to identify yourself, that's a serious problem. And people with authority, be it government, be it the public intellectuals, be it the gurus, whoever, they have a responsibility. So I think we should blame the individual also, because they haven't done their part of it, but there are institutional mechanisms that have also failed. I would also like Richa to make a comment, because she's lived here and been through all this. I appreciate hearing her point of view also.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I actually encouraged Mr. Sood to ask this question, because when I came here and sat here, he found out that I'm the Hindu representative for the Scottish government. And he said, why is it that there is no voice? Why is that there is no freedom of speech? I have only taken on this position just last year, and I'm figuring that out myself. Very recently, an organization from down south, they approached me, they approached various temples, and they wanted to hold seminars against grooming gangs and conversion, post-conversion, coerced conversion. So all the temples who were very scared in holding these organized seminars, they kindly obliged. Sumanji's here. Very soon I got a call from the Scottish government to say that there has been some elements who have reported that some misinformation is being spread against Christians and Muslims, and this is highly divisive. My answer to that was, protecting oneself is not divisive. Equally important for community cohesion and social harmony is that you understand a community's need and the need to protect itself from these forces and support them. This is a community that doesn't speak, has not spoken. Last year we found Scottish Hindu Foundation. Now 80, 90 years of Hindus living here, we never had a Hindu organization. Talking about the history of Scotland, if you want to follow the website Scottish Hindu Foundation, there is a brief history of Scotland. We will elaborate more since Rajiv ji put a great emphasis on it. But the answer to that question is we've never been organized. We've never been strategic. We don't have lobbies here like other faith belief communities. We are too busy taking photo ops, garlanding our MPs and MSPs, feeding them in the streets, samosas. So we need to change our mindset. The fault lies within. But I see great change in the last 2 years, certainly since the last 1 year. Puneetji, who is responsible for bringing me to the fore, he was, doing this before me. But I continue to see all these problems in the, where the victims are being questioned and shamed. I'm trying to raise a voice, but I need the community to be, and hopefully Scottish Hindu Foundation will raise a voice against all of this. People who are present here are all enlightened Hindus who understand these problems that we face today. So I don't have answers, I have more questions, and I'll pass on the mic to you to answer.
So this is very good. I'm so happy that Richa is here. Thank you. We need more people like her. You need local people who can speak up, who understand the problem, who stuck their neck out, who pushed back. When she was asked by the government, she didn't say, oh, I'm so sorry, I won't do it again, please. She didn't do that, she talked back. And that business of reversing the gaze and answering back is very important. Let me just say, first we agree that the community needs to self-empower. And you need to train, learn, understand, study, and create new leaders. That's one thing. And besides the leaders, the rest of you need to support them, whether it's with money, with volunteerism, you need to support them. But let me also suggest a few other avenues. Strategic alliances. For instance, the Jewish people in many parts of the world support these Hindu initiatives because they have faced similar things. So they have a history of similar stuff that they faced. I don't know how they are in Scotland, but at least I know in many other countries they are supporting. But probably understanding the legal rights you have in Human Rights International. There are all these international human rights organizations, the EU, the United Nations, and so on. There are so many human rights you have as a minority. You should invest in understanding the legal framework of international rights of religions and of minorities, and the right to represent free speech, the right to represent yourself, and the right to, if a government bullies you and suppresses you as a minority, you have rights that go beyond Scotland. You have legal rights. You should go file a case somewhere in the international court, somewhere. You should take a few examples, do clear documentation that this is happening, so you can prove it. It should not be emotional and subjective, it should be objective and it should be evidence-based. Build a case and file a big lawsuit against Scotland for daring to tell you that you should not be teaching your people how to defend themselves. All you're doing is conducting self-defense, emotional self-defense. It's not even physical violence. It is how to protect yourself from psychological harassment and all that. It's just like if somebody were to say that women are getting self-organized against rape, and so now somebody scolds them, how dare you do that? I mean, it's that retrograde. That's how backward this is. And so you should speak up. Another idea I would give you is bring your story out in the social media. I can help you with that. I mean, if you have well-documented things to say, and you have an articulate spokesman, you are an articulate person, I would like to invite you that we can put you on my show. We have a whole international reach, and this will put some pressure. This does work. It has an effect, because if your story is just, you're scared and nobody knows about it and it's hushed up, then it won't go far. But if you make the right kind of noise, logical and legitimate, not anything irresponsible, and you do it in the international platforms with social media. One is the legal platform, the second is the social media platform. You will get some, then you put the other side on the defensive, that they cannot just go bully you and get away with it. And whatever somebody says, you're going to record it and you're going to play it on the air. You should have more people willing to stick their neck out and fight back.
Thank you for such an insightful answer. Actually, that was one of the best, I would say, question as well. Another question is from Dr. Graham Dobby, and it's on Bookism. Usually there is a motive and a final goal in these sorts of moments. What do you think is the final goal of Bookism?
The final goal of wokeism is a redistribution of wealth. A redistribution of wealth, because the feeling is, so that's why they're talking about reparations for ex-slaves and reparations for suppressed communities. I come from a suppressed community also in many ways. And the thing is that based on merit, we've looked after ourselves. I do believe that those who are underprivileged for whatever reason should be given special help. I do believe that. And I believe that blacks in America do need special help. I don't believe in politicizing this, and I don't believe in turning this into a kind of a tit-for-tat reverse discrimination. That you discriminate against us, now we'll discriminate against you. You were violent to us, we'll be violent against you. I think that just breeds more violence and problems than it solves. We have to also learn to document the problems, make sure they won't happen again, have responsible, accountability, make sure that those who are suffering are taken care of properly, and then move on. We cannot. So what these guys are trying to do, the end result wokeism wants, is the end result that Marxism has sought. So wokeism is a form of Marxism. It's a form of Marxism, a class struggle. It's not an economic class struggle anymore, like in the case of Marx originally was an economic classes. This is more a class of all the people who think that they are oppressed. It could be your religion, could be your race, could be your gender, whatever. If you think you're oppressed, come together and we'll overthrow everybody else. That's what wokeism wants to achieve.
So we're talking about Scotland and India. Now, Scotland's been in India since the beginning of the 18th century. And when Scotland was having a really bad time, for a variety of political reasons, she then discovered this wonderful thing, which I'm sure you all know about, called the Enlightenment. It was in Scotland that it started. And that's when the great philosophers and early scientists and engineers started having their thoughts. And because Scotland was, in fact, a very literate society for the time, I mean, they had solid little schools that taught people how to read and write, whereas the whole of Europe did not have that. Look, I'm a historian, that's what I'm speaking about. And then suddenly, with all the drama that was happening here, in this very poor little nation, they thought, oh, this East India Company. Just for the record, Scotland had an East India Company, and the English said, well, now that you've joined us politically, sorry, it's going to be the East India Company of the United Kingdom of Great Britain. So suddenly the Scots went out to the subcontinent of India and were immensely successful. Why? Because they had a work ethic, an aspiration, an ambition. Now, do you understand how much Indians have that work ethic, aspiration, ambition? So the Indian diaspora these days is global. But in those days, from Scotland, it went out to India to work, live, marry, and die there, as my family did. But others migrated to places like New Zealand, Canada, America, and Australia. But in India, they came to work. Now we have this wonderful situation. I was in a webinar with the UK High Commissioner this evening before we came here, where we are now seeing what India is doing, where India is pushing out and giving of her knowledge and expertise, and what? Her work ethic, her ambition, her determination. And we have to harness this. But you know the biggest threat we all have, I love what you've been saying about woke, etc., but it's the World Economic Forum.
Yes, yes.
It's run by unelected billionaires like Klaus Schwab, Bill Gates, and Trudeau, and that silly man, Rutte, in the Netherlands, who's trying to cull all the cattle, the livestock. They're trying to do this in Ireland, and suddenly people have woken up and they're thinking, hey guys, this is going to affect me. And until things affect me, people don't care. It's a sad, sad fact. So all the advice being given here is very wise, and I want you people. I consider India the land of my birth.
So I'm very glad to hear all these things, and I must tell you, my book, Snakes in the Ganga, somehow the boxes didn't reach, but there are 3 copies. I would like her to get one, Richa to get one. And when you read that, the last chapter targets the World Economic Forum. Because the World Economic Forum has taken this Harvard-based wokeism, which is Harvard-based wokeism. They brought together this critical legal theory, and then critical race theory were Harvard products. And now this business of Afro-Dalits being adjacent, the Dalits being adjacent, black adjacent is also a Harvard product. They are the Kennedy School Harvard of government is where Klaus Schwab was a student of Henry Kissinger.
He was mentored by
He was mentored by Kissinger at Harvard, and they came up with this idea that to develop this new world order, which is what they're doing, they need an institution which is not accountable to anybody. And it's not a government, it's not a church, it's not a think tank. Nobody knows where the money comes from. Nobody knows where the money is spent. It's in Switzerland where there's no transparency, and so it's not only unelected but unaccountable, and there's no transparency. So this out of anybody's reach system, very rich, huge amount of money they got, is now the playground of the what I call the new oligarchs. They are the new oligarchs. We think Russians are oligarchs. Well, of course there are, but there are also Bill Gates type oligarchs and all these kind of people. They're private individuals and businesses who, behind the scenes, want to control through the governments and control the economic situation, the political situation, the military situation, the technology situation. So this whole World Economic Forum, redistributing wealth, this whole vaccination thing, and this whole use of AI to control people, the use of AI to control people, is leading to what in my book I've described as the digital caste system. A digital caste system, which means using AI, there will be some people at the top of the AI who control the AI, and the AI's algorithms will control the rest of you to say what you will hear, what you will not hear, who will be censored, who has a voice, who doesn't have a voice. Your privilege is to speak. Your free speech will be graded, and a privilege will be assigned to you. So it's not like everybody has free speech. Some will have more free speech than others. So this is all through algorithms, because human beings cannot control 8 billion people. So you need computers and algorithms to do that, which is what's happening. These algorithms are biased. They are trained a certain way. They are trained a certain way to prefer certain ideologies and oppose certain ideologies. If I put in a certain paragraph, and it's critical of Hinduism, or a Hindu deity, or Krishna, or something like that, and no problem, it goes through. If I take the exact same paragraph and replace each of the Hindu words with the Muslim equivalent, it's immediately banned. We did a chat GPT where we asked, what do you think of the private life of Muhammad with women? And the answer was, I do not discuss the personal lives of religious leaders. We asked the same question about Sri Krishna, and it came back with all this. He was flirting with gopis, and he was doing this, and he was doing that. So it is obviously biased. Okay, so you can test it, and you will find that it is biased. Now the thing is that some people are in charge of training it, and India is making a mistake using ChatGPT as a platform on which to build more products, which means that everything you are doing, you are feeding the opponent. You're giving him knowledge, you're giving him your data, you're training him about what you like, what you don't like, and he's happy to do that. He's happy to say it's free of charge, please keep giving me all your stuff. I mean, that's how stupid we are. And so we need to stop being stupid and not run on other people's platform, but create our own platform. And we haven't done that. So this AI-based digital caste system is the future world order which the World Economic Forum wants.